Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my Next Small Step RP-1 Career Mode playthrough. And what we have here is 5 seconds until the launch of the Martian moon hopper on its way to Mars to hop on moons. 1 second, ignition, lift off with those beastly solid rocket motors, taking us off up into an orbit that will hopefully throw this into a nice gentle intercept with the Martian system so that we can bounce around between the moons. Because yes indeed, this is intended to be, that is that craft that we talked about in great detail about how we are going to get into the Martian system. And it's kind of a, what do you call it? It's a little bit of both of the types of things that I often do here, where I'll often like plan out in excruciating detail exactly what I want to do and how we're going to get there and all that stuff. But I also don't have experience in moving around in the Martian system, and so it's not really, it doesn't feel quite right for me to, what do you call it? You know, cheat my way into the Martian orbit and like move around between the moons just to see what the kind of delta V numbers would be and all of that stuff. So I'm doing kind of what I think, as much as I can understand, of how that will work, and then from there we're just going to go a little bit by the seat of my pants, and if that means we have to launch another mission down the line, so be it. That's kind of how this whole series has gone. There's equal parts of like, you know, I've planned ahead and I know how to do this, and so I know this is going to work, and also like I have no idea how this is going to work, and we're going to just see what happens. But anyways, we've seen this launch a couple of times, so I'll see you up in orbit. Alright, not quite in orbit, but I see a problem with my staging, and we're going to just see how this goes real quick. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, my staging was messed up just a touch, so hopefully that will not cause too much trouble. But yeah, we are on our way up, and we have here, as we designed previously, the Martian moon hopper spacecraft, which I'm pretty darn excited about. Someone actually gave me a suggestion to change this up, and I could probably use RCS only for this lander, and I think that's a great idea, but I already put this together, I guess. Like, it was already building by the time that I got that comment, and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I should definitely have done that. So not something I'll be able to do this time, but if you go into RCS Build Aid or even Kerbal Engineer, it can tell you the total delta V of your RCS, which can help make you not as nervous as I was about just using RCS and not actually having an engine on there at all, because this little tiny engine is probably still overkill for what we are going to be trying to do and the orbital velocities that we are going to be seeing around Deimos and Phobos. I actually don't know what the orbital velocities are, and so I assumed that there would still be some, you know, engine motoring up to orbital velocity before we do our rendezvous, but it may be a completely different beast altogether, now that I think about it, and that actually makes a lot of sense. If it only costs 4 meters per second of delta V to land, that means I was probably only going about 4 meters per second anyways. Like, that's probably just how fast I was going, and so having an engine with like 200 seconds of or 200 meters per second of delta V on there is actually ridiculous overkill. So yeah, whatever. We'll see. This is a brand new experience for me. So we are going to learn together about how to do this, and then you can take from my examples and from my mistakes. You can then see like, oh well, you don't actually need quite as much, so you can scale back just a bit, and that will be lovely. So there we go. We are just about now in orbit. Fantastic. And cut this off, and if we look at the alarm clock, you can see that we have actually launched ahead of the transfer window by just a bit. And my thinking there was I wanted to, like, this has more delta V like on the transfer stage, so I want this one to have the suboptimal launch window, while the other one is using, I think, an Telecentaur B, and I'm going to want that to be on the money, because that is going to be the dicier of the two missions in terms of delta V budget. Using a Titan 3E, I can basically throw stuff wherever I want. All right, so there's our transfer windows. We can actually, what I'm going to do, whoops, that's not quite right. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to grab as much as I can in both directions and then move it back towards now. All right, so yes, indeed, that is exactly the kind of transfer that I was afraid that we were going to get because the best transfer node is in about 9 days. So I'm probably going to adjust my this thing so that I can actually get to that. But let's just see what this would look like. So focus target around Mars, and this puts us into a nice low orbit. So 4,889 meters per second at delta V here, and this is the moon hopper. So this is not what the orbit is that we're going to be looking at, but all told, it's going to be another 2,200 meters per second of delta V to circularize in a low orbit around Mars. And I just wanted to get the transfer that makes this part easier, right? Like, I'm not too worried about actually doing this, but I want it to be like, I want the gentlest possible entry into the Martian system. Ideally, we're also going to want to be in the plane of Deimos and Phobos here, so we're going to have to do some adjustment on that as well. But otherwise, I think this should just about work. I'm not terribly stressed about that. There we go. So something like that is more what I'm looking for, because that puts us just about in the orbit of the Martian moons, or in the plane of the Martian moons when we arrive. And so then we're going to want to just barely capture, well, not barely, but capture just up into the orbit of Deimos. So something like that is what we are looking for. That's going to cost us a total of 6,000 meters per second. So when we arrive, it's going to cost all of our delta V on the way over there, and then we will have plenty of extra to make corrections and also enter into the orbit of Deimos. Hopefully. Maybe. I really have no idea. Like I said, I haven't thoroughly tested this. I've done some of the napkin math and I've done some simulations on this, but I have not done the whole thing front to back to make sure that it all works. So we are just gonna see, and I think that will be a ton of fun. So yeah, this should get us there, and this should get us at least one of our objectives. Like, I'm fairly certain, fairly confident this will get one of our objectives for certain. So let's plan for this. I am getting credit for science from the landed Midlands area of the moon, including surface analysis, which is making me wonder if hold on, get out of the way. Everybody out of the way. Does the solar back have connection? I don't know how it would, but I'm getting, I don't know what shenanigans just happened there, but I just got a whole bunch of a burst of communications, I think from the Solarback rover, but yeah, I have no idea. All right, so we are now on our way. We are burning for the next 5 minutes with our RL-10s. Ooh, hold on a second. That looks lovely. Burning for the next 5 minutes to get towards the Martian system, where we will be doing all sorts of really neat science that I'm really excited about. This is a mission profile that I've never done before. I've never done anything like it before. I feel like in a lot of times when I play KSP career mode games, I over-optimize. Like, I optimize the fun out of the game, which is like a really bad habit of mine, but something that people kind of do. Like, people that are kind of optimization focused will optimize the fun out of the games that they are playing to their own detriment, and then they will get bored and it will be very sad. So I'll do something like create a roving hopper with like a big, heavy, uncrewed probe that can refuel itself using in-situ resource utilization, and it has its own drills and chemical plant and everything else, and it basically just hops to every biome on the moon and Minmus and just hoovers up all the science and basically in one go finishes the entire tech tree. Like, I can't even help myself. I go like, well, let's just get a little bit of science. Well, if I make a hopper, that'll be a really good amount of science, and let's do that. And then I do, and then it's like, well, I guess I'm done with the game now. I've got all of the science, and there's no real need to do any outer planet exploration or anything. And then I get bored, and then I quit. Story of my life. But I'm really enjoying RP-1 because it's really making me fight for every scrap of science, for every contract. I'm still like, the moon is still like this holy grail of difficulty that I am like really excited to go do more about and try more things. Like, that's super exciting to me still. Landing people on the moon is like usually the very first thing you do in a Kerbal Space Program game. Like, if you're not dealing with the wild difficulty of RP-1, that's something that you can do with like your second launch, maybe second or third, depending on what mods packs that you're using. Of course, there's a pretty wide variety of choose your own adventure here, where you can do all sorts of different things. Am I using the upper stages RCS? Did I get that mixed up? Because I should not be using these. Why are these active? Oh, I think these might be active because I was what do you call it? Oh, for goodness sake. Probably when I was showing this and looking at like the RCS balancer and all that, I was probably playing with these. Okay, I'm gonna just remove all nodes. We're gonna kill rotation. But yeah, like the game is very choose your own adventure, especially with the mods that you install, and so it's it can be very different depending on what you end up doing. However, when I often play, like if I'm not playing on something as wildly difficult as RP-1, it's often just that simple to get yourself into a situation where it's like, well, I've broken the difficulty for myself. And then you end up not having fun. But RP-1 makes me fight for it tooth and nail, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. Alright, so I am just trying to fix my closest approach. It looks like I've, in the course of that 5.5 minute burn, we have lost our separation has gotten a little too high. So, you know what, I'm just burning my RCS, but I should probably... This is fine now. I mean, I could technically just do a burn to actually do this. Okay, now we at least have an encounter, so what I'm going to do now is, before we get to a point where... This vessel... Look at target. No, focus, target... This vessel... No, it's not quite working the way I want it to. Oh wait, here we go. Before we go much further, really not much further at all, I want to focus target, and I want to get to a point where we can have a better encounter, because my encounter is a little janked. And we can fire the engines, like that's totally allowed. Alright, so we're going to do a correction burn of about 134, less than that. More than that? A little bit less than that. Because once again, we want to be in the plane of moons, and if I can have nice low para-Aryan, not that low, nice low para-Aryan, but still be in the plane of the moons. Perfect. That looks perfect. Then I can plan to do what I showed you here, and then jump down into that, and that will make it much easier for us to nail those what do you call it? Nail those transfers between the moons. Just make sure as best we possibly can, because we want to start with the plane of Deimos. So I'm just like visually doing this. I'm not sure there's a better way. So we're just going to line that up there like that. Get that into the same line visually, and see, that looks about right. And so that's about close enough. There we go. So that is what I'm looking for as far as my transfer. So let's do that with a quick correction burn. before we fall out of near Earth, because I'm not sure that this this particular Centaur has yeah, this does not have deep space avionics, so we need to do this nowish. Okay, good enough. We are going to execute next node. Yeah, because this needs to be very precise, apparently. All right, ullaging up. Ullaging up. What did I just say about this needing to be precise? Okay, there we go. Now we are moving in. Our orbit is changing. And look at that. That's pretty darn good. I mean, it's not, actually. Now that I'm looking at it, it's not good at all. But for a brief, shining second, it did look pretty darn good. All right, just using RCS to finish this off, and this is actually remarkably effective. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Boom. And that's pretty good. Like, that's not so bad as far as coming into the correct place. I would like it to be a tiny bit closer to get more O-berth effect as we circularize, but I'm really just not that stressed about it. I think this will be just fine. So our plan is, as I mentioned, we are going to break into the Martian orbit. We are going to encounter Deimos kind of whenever it's convenient. We're not going to go like way out of our way to save Delta V. And then we are going to land and then transfer to Phobos and land again. That is the plan, and I am sticking to it. And so that is it for this so far. I think this has been an incredibly successful mission. Let's go ahead and get this separated. Pop that off and impart just enough Delta V to mess us up a tiny bit. And make sure you go turn your RCS all back on and extend your antenna. There we go. Just 3 antenna. That's all that we decided that we needed. Or solar panels. That's all we decided that we needed. And we are on our way. So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn on our science. All right, so we've got our automation set up to turn on and off when power permits. Otherwise, we are just about set. So what I'm going to do now is we are going to point ourselves towards where the sun is going to be. Helps to actually activate your avionics. I swear, I do this every time, and I have a little panic attack every time. Okay, so now we're pointed at the sun, and I'm just going to adjust one last time to make sure that we are perfectly headed for the inclination that will match Deimos' orbit as best as we possibly can. Perfect. And now that's it. Like, that's what we're looking for. So now I'm just going to ride us out of here. How long is it going to take for us to get to... We're focusing the vessel, and we are heading out of here, and it's going to take 2 days and 7 hours for us to escape Earth's sphere of influence, and I don't feel like waiting for that, so I'm just going to put a maneuver node inside the orbit, the sphere of influence of Venus, and we are going to use that as our indicator that we have crossed over and are ready to actually commence operations. So hopefully our next launch doesn't step all over that, but very successful launch so far. Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this one, touching down on the moons of Mars. All right, moving right along to our next launch, which is another Mars mission. Yes, so this is on just a Telecentaur, the mission to do basically the Pioneer style mission profile. Ignition. And we have the very, very slow liftoff of our Telecentaur rocket using the LR-89s once again, the upgraded version of that, the 7.1 I want to say, and the LR-105. So it's been a while since I've used these. You can see they only have 2,000 data units because they're the newest version of an old rocket. But yeah, so this is the Pioneer Mars mission, which is going to be doing the same as the Pioneer Venus missions before it have done, where it is going to try to put an orbiter and a lander onto Mars and get all the contracts and science done attendant to that. So if I manage to nail all of these Mars missions, then that is actually going to be a very good chunk of money and science that will help us to move on to a big push towards actual lunar crewed landing, which is like looming pretty damn soon, right? Like, it feels like I'm speeding this up because this is just taking forever. It feels like it's like I only just started, like, but I'm already getting to the point where I need to get that lunar landing done. I've accepted the contract to do a manned lunar orbit, and that's pretty damn exciting. And that has a long enough that has a long enough expiration date that I'm very confident that I can get that done within the next 4 years. I have so many contracts right now. Yeah, first crewed lunar orbit. We got to do that sometime in the next 4 years, and I'm not too stressed about that. I think what we're going to want to do with that one is I'm going to roll my own service module because I don't think that I want to use just the stock Gemini stuff for that mission. I think I'm going to build my own so that I don't have to stress as much about either going all the way to Apollo or using Gemini and like just adding stuff on. So it'd be better, I think, to just roll my own from scratch and use that as my transfer to and from the moon. All right, we have, oh no, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Well, I don't think we are going to space today. Do we just not have control? What's going on? We've got the gimbal, but we're just like flopping around. Okay. Well, that was stupid. I have no idea what happened there. Did it like bump? Is it just because I'm not using the verniers on this anymore? Like, that could be a big part of it, but woof. Well, that was no good. So yeah, this mission may not make it to Mars. That may have eaten up enough of my Delta V that we will not make it. In the real world, we probably would have range safetied that and blew it up so that it would not fall in any populated areas after going as completely out of control as that. Yeah, they don't let rockets flop around and hope that maybe they'll get back under control in real life. That's just not a thing. But this thing should, well, I have no idea. I really have no idea if we have the margin that we would need to make this happen. So I guess we're just gonna see. But we are just about on our first stage cutoff, and there we go. Now we have the RL-10 Centaur rolling us in the correct orientation and getting us moving. So the nice thing about this particular spacecraft is, having learned what I did about the Venus orbiting spacecraft and learning about descent and landing, and also knowing what I know about Mars's atmosphere, I'm fairly confident that we can do this with just a teeny tiny spacecraft. Like, I just think that we're going to be able to knock this out with just the Delta V that we have on board. Assuming that we can actually, make the transfer. If we make the transfer, then I think we're still going to be okay. But I've packed kind of like a very small thing. Like, even looking at this, I'm like, wait, are you sure that's enough, Justin? Is that actually what you need? But, looking at the Delta V for getting to Mars, it's actually not a hard capture. Like, according to the Delta V tool that Felix Yu put together, which I use because it's very easy to just pop up, it's about 700 meters per second to capture an orbit of Mars, and then 1440 meters per second for low orbit. And yeah, that I've got that, so that should all be fine. That's just, I feel very nervous about it because it feels like this is very small compared to a lot of my other interplanetary missions that I've been running. Yeah, so I guess we will have to see about that. I think that the Centaur is enough of a beast to just kind of take care of any absolute mess ups that I made here. Like, I really have no idea what it was that caused that flip out, but it looks like we are probably just fine. So let's disengage the autopilot. Oh no! This is one of the ones that doesn't have RCS. I wonder if that's part of it. Gosh darn it. I don't have RCS fuel for the lower stage here, so I'm going to have to do something like this. Enable, 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 and enable. And I just have to hope that's going to be enough. Okay, so we have reached a decent orbit, 150 kilometers as per normal, in the plane of the moon, which I'm not sure if that's like the best way to do interplanetary missions always, but I find that it's usually good enough. So let's see what it looks like to get out to Mars. All right, so best departure is in over 2 years, but we're not going to do that. So let's just drag that down there. Departure in 28 days. That's not good enough either. Let's not forget to include our capture burn. And I'll bet you that's it right there. Not waiting a day. Okay, so it looks like this in just half an hour. Let's see what that looks like around Mars. Because this one, we just need to get low orbit around Mars. We don't actually care about where exactly we wind up, but we would like to be able to land once again. In the sun would be great, and in a place where we can communicate with Earth would be just lovely. So we want something more equatorial rather than polar like this is here. So I can just remove that, and then we can mess with our orbit a bit. Well, not in that direction, we can't. Very small changes in our orbit make just a massive impact. Yeah, let's get in plane of the Martian moons, just like our other spacecraft. I don't see any reason why not. All right, so this is our plan, and it is going to cost us more Delta V than we have. So we're gonna have to do something dicey. Yeah, hard to say how we're going to do this. We may have to try to like do a little bit of an aero brake or something, but I don't see any reason why not. But yeah, that big flip around inside the atmosphere easily took that much Delta V off. Like, we would have been able to make this burn, I think, if not for that being super duper terrible. I'm just poking through and I'm looking to see if there's maybe a better transfer window out there for me. Alright, so that is about the best that I think I can do. I was able to shave about 300 meters per second off of this transit. And then we're going to have to do like some kind of aero brake or something, because I'm not sure we're going to have the Delta V to make that happen. So yeah, fun times. Go little tiny thrusters, take us away. Fortunately, we don't have too far to go. Thankfully, we were able to ullage up and get moving. Our engines are ignited and we are on our way. We are going to have to decouple this spacecraft at the end of this burn and immediately finish it off, but I'm probably going to do that in the form of a correction burn rather than actually try to finish this burn exactly as it is, which is fine. It's not that big of a deal. And then we're just going to see and see how this thing goes, because, yeah, it's light. It's this uses a generic thruster, so that should be relatively easy to deal with. But yeah, we'll see how that goes when we get there. But yeah, this mission may not go. This is probably the easier of the two missions because it's on a much lighter, smaller, and cheaper rocket. I could probably, if I wanted to chase this if I wanted to chase this transfer window, I could probably build a Titan 3E and throw the same on the same payload, and that might be able to actually get that going. So that may be something that we do if I don't think that this is going to work, but we still have a shot, so I still think that there's no reason to panic and cancel the mission yet. Alright, so I'm going to abort this node execution now, and we are just going to say farewell to this spacecraft. And off we go. Fabulous. Okay, so we're going to activate these avionics. Push away from the spacecraft, and we are just going to start activating this as normal. Extend our antenna, get all of our solar panels out. Well, some of our solar panels out anyways. We are not going to be getting these ones out until we are ready to land, or until we are landed, theoretically. Alright, so we are away and prepared for our flight, but now we just need to make an adjustment to see if we can't get there. So the way that I'm doing this is a fairly intuitive and non-math based approach. I'm just like right-clicking on our closest approach based on a maneuver node, and I'm just doing what I can to see if I can't bring that number down and just see what directions seem to have the greatest impact, and it's definitely more prograde is what is having the most impact right now. Gets us down to an encounter. Fabulous. So yeah, just about finishing that maneuver was about 110 meters per second short. But I've pushed this out a couple minutes so that we can do this in the form of a correction burn with our proper spacecraft rather than just trying to rush and finish. All right, and this allows us to kind of fine-tune where we want our orbit. So like I said, I want to be roughly in the plane of the oops, wow, that shot across really quick. Wanted to be roughly in the plane of the moons of Mars, because I have to imagine that having both satellites there to do what do you call it? To do communications could only be a helpful thing. So yeah, that is fine. This is not going to be as good, and I'm actually going to bring this in really close because I may have to do an aero brake pass. Not this close of one, but all right, so there we go. That's what I'm looking for. We'll plan for that. So as we do that, we can just actually look at our spacecraft, and it's just a nice tiny little thing, like a little, I can't remember exactly what the size profile on this, but it's probably like 6.625 meters, something like that. It's just itty bitty, just like a really small probe. This thing is less than a ton all up. Which I like. I like throwing tiny probes long distances. It's, it shows just how much the rocket equation robs you of your capabilities by sending heavier and heavier things. So shedding mass is pretty much always the right move. Oh, we are not actually balanced. Interesting. That's a bad sign for my spacecraft here. I thought I had balanced it. I always use RCS Build Aid. I love that tool. It is one of the most important tools that I use to make sure that my craft are balanced, but I have done something wrong with this one, and it is not quite balanced. Because you see, I had to build asymmetrically. Because every kilogram is so important, you need to be careful about that sort of thing. But about not including extra stuff. Sorry, I need to actually finish my thought sometimes. But it's easy to do. It's easier to do something like, at least mass wise, it's better to do something like put your antenna on one side and then some other science equipment on the other, and then balance it out using the center of mass adjuster on the probe, and that will help to save you a little bit of mass. All right, so that didn't work much at all, but let's point ourselves prograde and then just use the RCS on our craft to give ourselves a nice close pass that we will be able to do stuff with when we get there. Fantastic. Although we should point ourselves down towards the sun. Stay focused on Mars, please. And we are swinging around so that we are focused the wrong way. So it looks like we want to be up towards the sun. All right, and there we go. We have sunlight. We are pointed in the correct direction. Let's just check one last time. And you can see that it's moved us quite a bit. So let's just tuck that right back in there, and that it will be just fine. It's not quite in the orbit that I was looking for, or in the inclination that I was looking for, but I'm also not really willing to mess with that too much at the moment. So yeah, we'll just put it right there, and that's it. We're just going to leave it. Perfect. All right, so let's take a look at this spacecraft just real quick. A little bit washed out by the sun, but yeah, so this is a very simple spacecraft bus. So we've just got a very shiny metal integral tank with some experiments stuck on the side. Let's fire up those experiments on our way. All right, got all of our automation set up, and we have good power. Fantastic. So these have very large solar panels compared to the size of the spacecraft, because we are going to Mars, where we're going to have, just as a matter of fact, about half of the solar power production that we would on even in orbit of Earth. Got all of our basic science experiments, and then this teeny tiny little lander. It's just adorable, and I love it. And we'll talk more about that when we get there. But yeah, this is just a little teeny tiny lander, and I have decided to use these solar panels as not just as solar panels, but also to help me break into orbit of Mars, because it has such a tiny little atmosphere that you could actually use these as extra drag, like as aero brakes a little bit, without necessarily breaking them, if you are careful about how you do it. So that is what we are going to try to do, and I am excited to see if that works. One last thing that I would kind of like to check. We have 2,391 meters per second of delta V. Let's see what it's going to take to break into orbit around Mars. And yes, indeed, we are going to have to do all kinds of extra stuff. So our current trajectory is going to get us something like this at the absolute best, which is not great. Nope, that is not great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom us out here, and we are going to adjust our, just like we did with our Venus mission, where I, messed that one up also, a couple days ahead. Let's see, that's 130 days, and we'll say 126. So 4 days before we actually reach the sphere of influence of Mars, I'm going to put down a maneuver node. And we're going to use alarm clock to put in. So I'm going to put in, just like I did with the parasite around Venus, I am going to say adjust para-Aryan around Mars for that. And there we go. So that says Pioneer Mars 1, adjust para-Aryan, and that is going to tell us to fix that when we get to Mars, before we get to Mars, so that we can make sure that we have a good, we are oriented in the correct direction, so that even if we don't manage to get our orbit lowered to a dramatic degree where it's easy to get into a circular orbit, like by aerobraking or something, we should, in theory, still be able to target a good landing spot. So that is what that's about, and that is what we will do when we get there. But other than that, this is a partial failure, partial success, depends on how pessimistic you're feeling at the moment. But we're on our way to Mars, so I really can't complain too much about that. But yeah, I think that is where we are going to leave it. Short and sweet, get two vessels on their way to Mars, and we are going to call that good. So if you enjoyed this episode, please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, that helps me out, and I will see you next time.